Let's look at a student answer. It is a paper 1, question 5, method in context. It gets top band, so let's see how we answer this question. This is the question that we're looking at. It is from the AQA website under assessment resources, and it is labelled answers and commentary. It's for paper 1, but there are some for every paper on there. Just pause this now just to read the question and the item, familiarise yourself. You might even want to bullet point some ideas down, what you could be writing, and then we'll have a look at the student answer. It got 17 out of 20, and I'm going to talk you through what the student did to get that top band. So firstly, looking at the student answer, you can see that they've gone straight into it. They've not done an introduction. Now that's fine. Introductions are not essential, but some students do like to do them because it does show a little bit of knowledge about what a group interview is. They might talk about interpretativists preferring it and how it creates rich qualitative data. So this student starts off by saying a first strength, so they're using the wording from the question, is that, and they quote the item, it encourages deeper thought, the participants can develop their ideas put forward by other group members. And then they explain this. They don't just drop the item in and then leave it there. They go into a little bit of detail, and they talk about it being this open discussion. That means that pupils can listen to other pupils about the factors involved that influence to pick those subjects. And that is a clear strength. And we have got a application to the subject choice there. And they say they possibly realise that this factor might influence them too. They then continue with this strength because they say this is helpful. It means that the researcher can gather information. It's built up through this discussion of a number of pupils, allowing stronger conclusions to be made and increase validity. So we're starting to increase some concepts there. We're linking them together, and potentially we've got strength number 2. And we go back into context because they say that they are more likely to remember their reasons for their choices if they listen to other pupils' choices. So we've got, again, another link or another reference to subject choice. Now then the student, what they do is they use this term however, and this is indicating that they are about to evaluate. And this is where we start to see our weakness number 1. And they say that if a pupil listens to other pupils' opinions of choice, they might agree to fit in with their peers. And it's indicating peer pressure rather than what they truly think. Now, again, we have got a little bit of a link to subject choice. Now here, you could go into a little bit more context because you could explain that actually peer pressure and homophobic language might be used because students are often faced with homophobic language if they are picking subjects that are outside of their gender domain, for example. And adding that little bit further context will just solidify the weakness of this method. So now we're going on to strength number 3. Okay, again, using the wording from the question, is that when studying reasons for subject choice, is that it might reduce the power differences. Okay, so that is a real feature of interviewing or researching in a school because we've got the pupils towards the interviewer. There's a power imbalance. Now, that means that pupils may feel more relaxed, that they can be more honest about the factors that influence them to choose those subjects. So we're starting to develop this answer into the context of subject choice. And what this student does, they do this in this massive section here. They contextualise it. They say, well, girls might feel deterred from picking certain subjects like science and maths because these STEM subjects are not inclusive for girls and largely leave them out, using images of girls, leaving out images of girls in textbooks and demonstrations. And this feeling of discrimination may feel heavy and difficult to talk about. However, this method means that pupils are more comfortable to talk about their feelings to the researcher, who clearly has a higher status to them. And that's a really lovely way that they've linked the context and they've brought it back to the method and why this method is appropriate of using group interviews. This student does the same again. It does the however, so we're leading into our second weakness, and we're doing it as we go along. And it says, well, actually, the researcher's characteristics, so they're sort of following on from the power difference and the power imbalance. So the researcher's characteristics might be important in this case if the girls have a male researcher, and this is where they might be researching topics such as sexism might be misunderstood. And again, we've got that link to subject choice. And again, here we've got another missed opportunity where the students could develop this a little bit further by saying the fact that these are girls and they might be talking about sexism that they may face from teachers. They might feel that a male researcher might not be able to understand or empathise it or take it seriously, so they might choose not to mention that in their group interview. So again, we've got a weakness, but they could have developed that further. Now this time they're going to start off with a weakness. So now we're on weakness number 3, and again they use the item and they're talking about pupils, teachers and parents may find it difficult to find a time to meet as a group. And this time they're looking at parents as a social group that could be researched, and they talk about them not being a homogeneous group, and they have different schedules, language and opinions of the school. So we've got a little bit about the school context there, about parents, and it is a bit more generic about research rather than group interviews in particular. But what the student does do is that they do start to bring it back to subject choice, because they talk about some parents having no involvement, and whereas others might have a large say. And then this is where they do bring it back to the issue of the research, that practically they might not have found time to meet. Okay, again, that's undeveloped. There's not real much there that's linking it to I suppose subject choice or group interviews. It's a bit of a research characteristic, but this point here where they talk about the representativeness does link it back to subject choice quite well, because they say that parents that have little to say about their child's choices may not want to participate because they've got nothing to say in the group. So they've referenced the group interview. And if they do agree, the participant might feel overpowered by other parents who are very vocal in their attitudes, and they've linked it to not being representative. Okay, and we have got that further weakness number 4. So to finish off, this student has given 4 strengths, 4 weaknesses of using group interviews. They have applied it to the context of subject choice. There are parts that they could have developed further that possibly could explain why they got lower in the top band and not higher, but they do evaluate as they go along, and they do it quite explicitly as well. It's not just bolted on at the end. They do it in a sort of strengthen, this leads to a weakness type way. They don't offer a conclusion, and this answer would have benefited from a conclusion as well. Some further top tips that I would recommend is that when you are writing about your strengths and weaknesses, signpost whether they are practical, ethical or theoretical. It will show the examiner that you've got a good range. Make sure that you are applying to just more than one group. Don't just assume that the question is targeting pupils in school and research about them. You can talk about other people in a school context, such as teachers, head teachers, parents, schools advisors, people that work as attendance officers, truancy officers, anything like that can all be taking part of research as well. And hopefully this has given you a really good way of seeing exactly what you've got to do on a method in context.